Hello and welcome to Namio Health's first webinar, What Parents Need to Know About the Updated Dietary Guidelines. My name is Dr. Natalie Muth, and I'm so happy to be here and to be able to share with you some of the key highlights from the dietary guidelines and what it means for parents and families and small things that you can do right now to help your family to be healthier. But before I start, I just wanted to do a brief introduction of myself. So my background is I'm a pediatrician and registered dietitian. I practiced primary care in pediatrics for 13 years and recently left to start Namio Health to pursue a long-term passion and vision to be able to provide supportive environment for families who want to optimize their health and their child's health. And Namio Health offers the only virtual family healthy lifestyle program that meets the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations for an intensive health behavior and lifestyle treatment program. That's a mouthful, so much to say, but really, in short, I'm so happy to be here and hope that I can share with you some information that will be helpful for you and your family and maybe make you more educated about the dietary guidelines, but also maybe put you at ease a little bit that there's a lot you can do, small steps that make a big difference. So let's get started. So you may have seen not too long ago, the government, the Department of Health and Human Services, released the dietary guidelines for Americans for 2025 to 2030. Just a quick background on the dietary guidelines. I'm sure that there's been so much information out there and a lot of talk about it, but like, what does it actually mean for you, for your family, for each of us? And to put it in perspective, every 5 years, the government updates its recommendations for healthy eating that helps to inform public health programs and things like school lunch offerings. It's an implementation or something that is used in public health to be able to provide nutritious meals through some government-funded sources. For all the rest of us who maybe are not directly impacted by developing those programs or getting most of the nutrition from those programs, really it's intended to help us to know what the science says about best practices for healthy eating. Sometimes, most of the time, the dietary guidelines are aligned with the science, but sometimes there's some political influence and other things that come into play so that it isn't 100% based on the science. So that's the background. This is the new visual. This is the upside down pyramid that is intended to guide healthy eating. My recommendation is like, let's not make too much of this right now. The big thing about this is trying to pull from the recommendations what we can do today to help our family to be healthier. So let me pull out some of the highlights for you. So one of the key principles from these dietary guidelines is to eat the right amount for you. What this is trying to say, big picture, is trying to have that balance and not eating too little, not eating too much. So having balance. And the best way to do this for kids and families really is to try to aim to eat regular meals throughout the day, really scheduling out meals and snacks, helping a child to be hungry at meal times and listen to their body to know when they're full, to eat just the right amount and not too much, not too little. The next big thing that the guidelines recommended in their key principles is prioritizing protein foods at every meal. You may have heard a lot of stuff out there about protein. I mean, protein is a very hot right now. You'll see in the grocery store, lots of foods say they've got extra protein added. Now the guidelines are saying to prioritize protein, eat more protein. The reality is most people get enough protein already. So you don't necessarily need to be making major changes or shifts to try to like push more protein on the kids or, be getting extra supplements of protein or anything like that. No, 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 not at all. But the idea of prioritizing protein foods at every meal makes sense in that you want to make sure you include a protein source with meals. So this is fairly easy to think about when you're having those balanced meals in the day. So if you're offering your child or kind of having a little bit of schedule around meal times, breakfast, lunch, dinner, including a protein source. Now, protein can come from plant-based foods. Protein can come from animal-based foods. So plant-based foods, you're thinking nuts, seeds, legumes, beans, great source of protein. Plant-based food, or excuse me, animal-based foods, you might be thinking meat, poultry, fish, eggs, dairy, all really good sources of protein. These new guidelines emphasize some of the animal-based protein a little bit more than in the past, which the science really suggests that in that effort of trying to eat in a healthy way, environmentally friendly way, balancing eating the right amount for you, plant-based proteins are really good and very important. And I would prioritize plant-based proteins as much as possible. Other than fish is great to include. If you can try to get that twice a week, that'd be great. In the past, the recommendation for like red meat and things has been to have it twice a week or less. So something to think about, trying to have fish twice a week or more, red meat twice a week or less, you'd be in a pretty good place. Next, key principles from these new dietary guidelines is consuming dairy products. Now, dairy has always been something that's been recommended in the dietary guidelines, or a dairy substitute or a plant-based substitute that gets the calcium and vitamin D that is found in dairy products and some of the fats. We've always recommended full-fat dairy for like young children, like when they're one, but have recommended in the past lower fat or fat-free milk because it's lower in saturated fat and lower in calories. The new guidelines suggest that they recommend in the guidelines full fat milk. And to be honest, some of the research suggests that probably doesn't make that much of a difference what the fat content is for dairy products for most people, although other guidelines still suggest doing reduced fat milk for older children. But the dietary guidelines say go full fat. My opinion is you can go either way. It will be okay. And then it's listed fourth, but I think it should be number one, is eating vegetables and fruits. Here it says throughout the day. I recommend having scheduled meal and snack times, but hey, if kids want to snack on vegetables and fruits outside those times, great. As much as we can encourage vegetables and fruits is good. Now, a lot of kids, I know, don't always necessarily love vegetables and fruits at first, but we can help them to train their taste buds and help them to like it more. Quick tips you can do is if you have a fruit bowl out or just having it be easily accessible, you don't have to say anything, you don't have to nudge them to eat it. Just the fact that it's there and they're seeing it, it makes it more appealing. And when you're not looking, or maybe when you are, they're going to grab a piece of fruit and have it as a snack because they're seeing it in front of them. Similar idea with vegetables. The best time to get kids to eat vegetables is when they're really hungry. So I highly recommend like right after they get home from school or when they're at their hungriest, put out a veggie tray, maybe a little bit of a dip, and don't say anything and just have it be there for them. And you will be surprised of how much veggies your kids will eat without you having to badger them to eat their vegetables. And just as an aside, badgering them to eat their vegetables actually makes them like the vegetables less. So I don't recommend that. We can have a whole new talk on that and talking about how to help kids to come around to liking fruits and vegetables. But 2 tips, have it be easily accessible, offer it when they're the most hungry, and you might find that you'll be surprised. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the next key principle that was covered in the dietary guidelines is incorporating healthy fats. So the little bit of discussion around this one is what exactly is considered to be a healthy fat. The new dietary guidelines version and the historical kind of science-based version is a little bit different on this one. Generally, healthy fats, unsaturated fats, fats that are liquid at room temperature. You're looking at olive oil, avocado oil, canola oil. These are fats that generally tend to be heart healthy and to be healthier overall for us versus fats that are saturated fats. This just means they're mostly solid at room temperature. Things like butter, beef tallow are saturated fats. A lot of red meat products contain a lot of saturated fats. It's generally recommended to limit those. And in fact, these dietary guidelines are the same as in the past that have said to limit saturated fats. But it also recommends at that pyramid I showed you in the beginning, some, meats and butters and things like that that are actually high in saturated fat. So there's a little bit of discrepancy in there. So I wouldn't worry about the discrepancy too much. I would just say keep doing what we've thought to do of trying to aim for primarily unsaturated or healthy fats. All right, that's a mouthful for that one. Um, Next, focus on whole grains. So despite the new pyramid has at the very bottom whole grains are actually good for us. And we want to eat whole grains. Whole grains have a lot of fiber, and fiber can help us to feel full. High fiber can help us to have smooth GI system and to not be too bloated and to have regular bowel movements and things like that, which is really important for everyone, but especially kids sometimes can have more issues with that. So getting enough fiber is really important. And it's also heart healthy. So whole grains, vegetables, fruits, all are high in fiber. Highly recommend consuming them. In especially when grains are being consumed, this focus on whole grains is also to contrast of trying to not have so much refined grains or highly processed foods. And so this next and final key principle, I also think should be at the top. It's an important takeaway alongside eating more fruits and vegetables is the idea of eating less processed foods, highly processed foods, ultra processed foods, things that are in crinkly bags where you look at the ingredient list and it's like 50 items long with a bunch of words you can't pronounce. You have no idea what it is you're actually eating. That's a clue, ultra processed foods. A general rule of thumb for ultra processed is if it's got 5 ingredients or more, then it's probably ultra processed. It's not for everything. And some highly processed foods can be healthy, but for the most part, ultra processed foods contain a lot of added sugars and a lot of sodium and a lot of extra calories where the way that they've been manufactured makes us want to eat more and more of them, and they don't really make us feel full. So decreasing ultra processed foods is definitely something to do and to prioritize as much as possible. Now, the typical teenager has about 70% of the foods they eat are ultra processed. And it's not really that much better for younger kids or for adults. The reality is a lot of people are eating a lot of ultra processed foods, and they are associated with a lot of health conditions and chronic diseases and things like that. And part of the reason why we are eating a lot of ultra processed foods is because they are more convenient, because they tend to be less expensive, and because they've been perfectly engineered to make us like them a lot and want more and more of them. So small steps, if we can trade out one snack that's in a crinkly bag for a vegetable or a fruit or something the child can name where it came from and what it is, that's a big win. The dietary guidelines say that young children, actually kids to 8, so before adolescent, anyone younger than an adolescent should have no added sugars in their diet, and that teens, should have very limited added sugars, adults limited added sugars. The previous recommendations said for children to aim for 25 grams or less per day of added sugars. And for adults, trying to get 10% of our calories or less from added sugars, which is still what the recommendation says. It's probably not realistic for children to have no added sugars, but the typical child is having a lot right now, and it's hidden in lots of things. So another quick tip, just something to look at, if you do have a packaged food that child's eating or a snack, just looking at that label on the back and just kind of get a sense of how many added sugars are in it and try to aim for as low as you can. 25 grams or less for kids would be great. For just a little bit of perspective, like a soda, a 20-ounce soda has like 70 grams of added sugar. So most kids are getting a lot. There's some things that are really high in added sugar, so trying to minimize those or decrease those can make a huge difference. So that's a lot. That's a mouthful. But these are really just the key highlights from the dietary guidelines and what to make of it. So this is not the dietary guidelines anymore. This is the old school version of My Plate, which is what used to be recommended. And this is kind of our Namio version of My Plate. I would just say for key takeaways is to still be thinking in this way of trying to have a balanced meal and a balanced plate for kids and for yourself when trying to see like what does healthy look like. And while there's a little bit of differences between this and the new guidelines, like the new guidelines would say have more protein than the whole grains, have more vegetables and the fruits, even though they're still about half the plate, have more dairy. It wouldn't be on the side, it would be kind of like integrated in it. But in reality, if you're trying to aim to feed your family in a healthy way and to have an easy way to think about what a balanced meal looks like, consider this. Just as much as you can, trying to include fruits and vegetables. If half the plate can be that, great. Proteins, trying to have some protein source at meal times. Try to have some kind of grain, ideally a whole grain, so it's got lots of fiber. And then incorporating the dairy, at meal times. Kids don't need to have milk all day long or anything like that. Like the general guidance of aiming for about, depending on their age, 2 cups-ish, 2 to 3 servings of dairy a day, or a dairy substitute is still fine. But trying to go more vegetables, fruits, whole foods, less processed foods, balance it all out with kind of a balanced plate perspective, minimizing extra snacks and trying to really eat most of the food at meal times will help kids to really be as healthy as we can set them up to be. Certainly, we can't force them to eat what we want them to eat or in the exact way that we want them to, but we can certainly be great role models for them and help set the stage for it. And having vegetables, fruits highly accessible is one great way to do that. So with that, I'm going to pause and just say thank you so much for checking out our first webinar at Namio Health. We're really here to help. Our mission is to really help families to optimize health and well-being and to provide extra tools and supports to do that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. And let's just